Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Yak Gadget. For all your kayak fishing accessory needs, go to yakgadget.com. Pelican cases, coolers, and lighting. Go to pelican.com. The 153 Bait Company. For all your hard and soft bait needs, go to the153anglers.com. Now let's get this show started.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Reel Down. Me solo hosting again, but again with me this week for part 2 of last week's episode, Mr. Jordan Marshall. What's up, brother?
What's up? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing. I have been running around this last hour or two, but I am finally here, calm and collected, kind of ready to get into the TOC itself. I was kind of bummed that we didn't get to talk about that. It was a great show. For anybody that hadn't listened to it, go back and listen to it. We talk about him winning the AOI with Hobie on top of a few other things and get kind of in detail with it. I've had a lot of good feedback about that show too, man. A lot of people.
I got quite a few messages, even all the way up until today. People saying that they were catching up on the show and were asking me questions and things like that. So that's it's always good to have positive feedback.
That's right. I'll take any of it, but I definitely prefer the positive. But yeah. So what we wanted to do was just get into the TOC itself. It was out on Lake Eufaula. For anybody that doesn't know, that's southeast Alabama, southwest Georgia. It's on down there. It's known as the Big Bass Capital of the World country, something like that. I know they got a sign down there somewhere.
Giant sign and a giant bass that says that. My 2 trips to Eufaula were not super big bass filled, which is A-okay. I mean, it works out in the end, but you expect places to be like in Texas that say that, or maybe Seminole or something like that. I didn't get the whole, but by no means am I bashing Eufaula by any means. I did enjoy both trips there this year, but it didn't strike me as a big bass capital of the world kind of place. But I think they've laid claim to that for quite some time. So kudos to them for marketing themselves that way.
Well, one big thing, because I've been catching up on a lot of like you see back here, the MLF stuff and a bunch of tournaments I missed on, and Eufaula has actually killed off a lot of the grass. So, I would say probably 3 years ago. I mean, even 2020 when MLF was at Eufaula in the spring, there were giant fish everywhere, but the grass hadn't fully disappeared. But I know talking to some of like your buddies and stuff, and like people like Adam Reiser, like grass was hard to come by down there if you could find any. Real healthy anything. But
it was a really weird. By no means am I a grass expert. I like to consider myself a rock expert. But the grass is really weird down there. I think there was little patches. I mean, I was expecting, by looking at Google and Apple Maps, you expect to go down there and see a lot of lily pads. Just looking at aerial view, and there were very, very, very few lily pads. And if you found lily pads, there were just 8 to 12, 10
small patches.
So. Very, very small patches. They were spread out, and excuse me, and they really weren't productive in practice or during the tournament. But what there was an unbelievable amount of is what a lot of people were calling bank grass. Now, I don't exactly know what the quote-unquote correct name for that is, but it's, it will grow right on the shore or in less than a foot of water, and it's, maybe a foot tall. A lot of it was bright green, and it would show up a lot of those places where there were lily pads on, or what I thought would be lily pads on the maps, and there were like these really, really, really thick floating mats that would come out, 10 to 20 feet off the bank. and I couldn't punch anything through it.
I was just about to ask that if it was that kind of like nasty thick that you can't do anything with.
It looked like ground. I mean, it looked like you could walk on it. I mean, I tried to pop a 2-ounce weight through it at one point when I was just piddling around and not knowing any better because I'm no puncher. And it couldn't get through it, and I was like, man, that's wild. And like we talked the other day, I was like, I don't keep a depth finder on the kayak, so I went up to the edge of it and stuck my rod in the water, and it's about 6-7 foot deep, and I was confused. We don't get grass that has 7 foot of depth under it, and it's so thick it looks like you can walk on it.
Walk on it, yeah.
I just got away from that. I was like, this is above my pay grade, and I was like, I'm out. I'm going to get away from this. I do like fishing reeds. I fish a lot of reeds on Seminole when I'm there. We've done that the last couple of years for Hobie. I like fishing the reeds at Seminole. And I tried to fish some reeds at Eufaula as well. In the spring when I was there, when I actually found out TOC was at Eufaula this year, and I'd never been to Eufaula before. And in the spring when I was there for the Bassmaster, I went down there to kind of pre-fish, and with expectations I would qualify for TOC. And I basically looked around, saw reeds, saw that thick grass, saw grass I didn't recognize.
That always bothers me when I see a vegetation I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just like, oh no, I don't know what to do here.
And I'm not, I don't spend a whole lot of time pre-fishing. I had one day basically for Eufaula, and when I realized that people were like, oh yeah, it's offshore brush or whatever else they mentioned, I went way, way, way upriver away from the grass to look like something that I fished. And I think, quite a few people would have probably fished if the TOC boundaries allowed it. I basically fished in Columbus, basically as far as you can take a kayak up river to that giant busted up dam. And I caught some spots. I mean, I caught a bunch of spots. I mean, it was 16-inch fish for days, and they ate everything. Top water, spinnerbait, jackhammer. I think everything I threw that day, I caught fish. And, in the spring at Eufaula, I kind of realized that was not going to be a winning pattern. So I just kind of kept it in my back pocket and was like, man, in the fall, when we go there for TOC, I might get beat a day or two from big bags offshore brush or whatever down south, but I feel like I can very easily come up here and throw up 80 inches of spots a day and lean on them pretty hard and cull through, no problem. And then I saw the TOC boundaries and was like, son of a gun. I mean, I spent a couple days on Eufaula in the spring, and I fished from River Bend up, and I mean, that was not even close whenever the TOC boundaries came out. So I kind of had to, throw everything out the window, forget about spotted bass and things like that, and really, really grind during the TOC, both practice and the tournament.
Would you say, just because of what you just said, having to like throw away, basically your history with it, I mean, not all of it, obviously, but something that you had a little bit, at least like we always talk about with a multi-day tournament. I mean, if you can get in the consistent 80s each day, you might, I mean, at least hold yourself in contention to where maybe on that final day you can make a big calls and a big push. Yeah. But when that happens, and knowing you had limited amount of pre-fishing time, was it a lot of like head down grinding, like physically during the tournament, or were you hitting a lot of maps, trying to find that thing that you missed? That, like you said, you're not an electronics guy, so I know you're not looking at, like offshore points and humps and stuff. You're looking for, certain types of structure or subtlety, secondary points, creeks coming in, stuff like that. So was it a lot of grinding, like mostly casting, or was there a lot of like
a lot
mental
of my
preparing?
practice is looking. It's driving, it's putting in, pedaling around, looking at things. I feel like a lot of the fish that I catch will more than likely eat what I throw at them. Um, I think the best way I could explain that, if that doesn't make sense, is you hear a lot on professional things, 80% of the fish are in 20% of the water. I like to think that that's very, very true. And that's how you win a lot of really big, especially single day tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's probably 10% of the fish in 80% of the water, or however the dynamic. I think there's a sweet spot of a lot of fish in a small amount of area, 80-20, and then there's going to be 10% of the fish and 70% of the water, and 10% of the fish are in 10% of the water, and they're actively eating,
Right.
not schooled up or anything else. Now that I got my math squared away.
I was
But
gonna help you out, but you got it.
yeah, I like to go after the fish that people are forgetting about, essentially, and just go after the actively feeding fish.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go find a mega school anywhere. I have no desire to go fish offshore. I mean, I've done it. I've had depth finder in the past. I just don't like it. Um, I think a lot of the times when you're casting at those fish, they're going to eat more consistently, and it's less of a puzzle to try to figure out what they're eating. I mean, if you go out there on an offshore fish and you could throw 15 things at them, and on the 16th thing they're liable to eat it every single cast.
Right.
uh, I just assume cover water, look for feeding fish that you can basically get a reaction bite from. And
Well, and
a
that's really
lot,
fishing instinct too, which
yeah.
I would agree with. Like, I run electronics, but just because it's something I don't know that I'm trying to learn.
Mhm.
But I could definitely like be on your side of the argument. When you're fishing the instinct and stuff like that, you've got your head more dialed in on that than paying attention to the graph, how they're reacting, all this other extra stuff you're trying, like that you're adding to your puzzle already.
Right,
Now some
right.
people look at it as, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago with like live scope and stuff, where you can throw a bait in front of it, see how it reacts to it, pull it up, throw a different bait, be like, oh, he liked that one, I'll take him.
Yeah,
But I don't know, I feel like it, honestly, if you're dialed in like you're talking about, when you're that focused on it, I feel like you could have just that little bit of an edge one way or another. It's kind of
yeah.
hard to explain because people that are like electronics dependent might not understand,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I just feel like it keeps you more, because you're paying attention way more to what you're feeling. You know, okay, they bit like that. What's similar to this? Not,
Right.
oh, there's a school there, they should all do it. You're like, okay, I have to replicate that cast or that scenario.
I think a lot of it is knowing seasonal patterns. I'm a very, you know, I go by feel a lot, just you covering water and things like that, and trying to keep it really simple. But I, I really read a lot of books, and I watched a lot of stuff. Bass University, I've watched all that stuff. So I feel like even though I don't take a technical approach when I'm on the water, I take a very technical approach when I'm off the water, kind of looking at maps, putting um, smart game plans together before I get there. And then when I get there, and a lot of guys know this, that I fish with me and against me, I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. So either things are going to work out and then I'm going to build off them and it's going to be a great day, or I'm going to spend my day spinning out because the fish are in transition and I can't seem to put together whatever pattern's happening. So I like to think, one fish does me a lot of good. One fish does me good. Two fish do me a lot of good. Three fish, it's game over. I'll figure it out. Uh,
Right.
and a lot of that's reading a lot of information to know seasonal patterns, to know what's going on before you ever get there. And then if you can get there, show up, catch a few fish, and it's doing what you want them or expect them to be doing, it's nothing more than just plugging and playing. It's finding similar areas. It's catching some fish, and I can be sitting on the water and just look at my phone and not even have to worry about what the depth is, because a lot of these places, and you can look at a creek and know the depth is pretty much similar in every creek you go to, especially if you start looking at topographical maps, which everybody's phone has. I mean, you pretty much know, hey, it's probably going to be deeper over here because the topographical map says that, or just looking at the lay of the land as you go by it.
Right.
But a lot of it's just finding places that are overlooked. And I by all means think flushing out, you mentioned history, flushing out the history of a lake is a good thing sometimes. We had a tournament this year on Melton Hill in Knoxville, and Melton Hill is a very, very tough fishery. I've won a couple tournaments on Melton Hill, and then the last couple of years I really struggled, and I couldn't quite figure out why. And I think I was just essentially fishing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting those fish to be there because the tournament was the same time of year. So I literally took off work one day and drove around and even told the guys that I was fishing against. I said, look, I'm approaching this thing like a brand new lake, because it seems like I approach new lakes a lot more consistently than I do some of the home lakes, because I get things stuck in my head of what I'm going to do, or you hear what other guys are doing at the tackle shop and you try to catch other people's fish, and that doesn't work. And I fished Melton Hill for a while, quite a few years since I've been kite fishing tournaments, whatever else. And then that tournament this year, I actually put in somewhere I never put in before, didn't even know existed. I fished in a bass boat, and the creek that I put in, never even knew there was a slide there, and basically pulled off that road that I had found the day before the tournament, slid in there, caught some fish, and absolutely freaking wrecked them. Just overlooked places.
Right. And that's something I've realized last year heavily for me was, you try and preach about not fishing history. There's certain situations where, the way I'd put it for like new anglers that would be maybe listening to this or learning from that is, it doesn't mean throw away everything you know about it, but just because you wrecked them doing this exact thing, even on that same day the year before, doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Sure, go try, but definitely don't lean on it that heavy, and unless it's working. I'm real bad about that. Like, one of my favorite places on Gunnersville is, I had quite a few trips there that were just fantastic. And I tend to always, when we hit Gunnersville, I'm like, man, that's where I'm going. And it's been crap the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'll even catch myself going when there's not a tournament, trying to like make it my honey hole again. And it's just not happening. And then I finally, like, where I camp, I never put in. And last year I was like, I'm just going to put the slide in right here. I paddled like 100 foot in front of our camper and caught a 6. And then
really?
Caught a 6. I caught a 4. I lost one bigger than the 6, and was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should consider this from now on. It's just get outside of what you normally go to. But so getting through the fishing and the preparation. How far out of AOI were you going into it? Do you remember?
I was in 8th place.
8th? I thought it was 8th.
I don't know the exact points. I think I was somewhere in the 270-ish range. I was about 28 points out, I think. Best recollection.
Because I think it was like Drew and Ewing were in the like 290s, weren't they?
Yeah, they were 5 guys. First through 5th was really was tight. Ewing had a couple point lead over them, but they were all within. They were all in the 290s, I think, the top 5.
Okay,
and then they was kind of set down, and then 6th through 10th were all very close.
Okay, so coming into this, pre-fishing set aside, what was your mentality? Is it I've got a real shot at AOI, or was it, like you said, you're an all or nothing guy? Was your main focus like, okay, I want to win this freaking thing? Obviously you want to win, but was you going into it, was it a two-way thing? Like, I would like to do both, or did you like have a hard set focus on one specific goal?
My goal going into it was going into the tournament was to catch 15 fish and finish in the top 3 of AOI and qualify for Worlds again. The year before, home when TOC was in Knoxville was win or everything else was not good enough. And that's an absolute. If anybody's wondering, I don't care if it's your home waters or not. That is an absolutely terrible mental state to be put in. Because on day 2 of TOC last year, I had a great bag, but I knew I lost, and I snapped a rod and threw it in the water, reel and all. I mean, had a good bag and knew I was
but not good enough.
Probably in the top 3. But I mean, it's a tough mental. It's a tough place to put yourself mentally, and it's really a tough place to stay, because even winning 10 grand last year, I was pissed off for days. And don't get me wrong, Lambert's my boy. I'm glad Lambert won. If I didn't win, obviously, but that's a terrible, terrible place to be, and you're not going to be fishing very long if it's win or bust. And I knew going into this year I couldn't do that to myself, and my goal was literally 15 fish, top 3 in angler of the year, and just try to stay as just calm and steady as possible. And I realized that because I had a really good outlook for Eufaula, and probably would have been a lot more confident until the boundaries came out. And once the boundaries came out, I was like, okay, I can't go in the back of these creeks. I can't go up at Columbus where I wanted to go. I couldn't fish River Bend, and the only spot that I'd fish that was, Eufaula like. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to go down here and wing it. And everybody was saying how tough it was. It's just, I think just being relaxed helps me as much as anything, because I don't get caught up in, forcing myself to rush things.
And that's a really good piece of advice, because the head game's for me at least, and we talk about it a lot on Paddle and Fin. The head game is probably more important than the fishing. I mean, yeah, you got to go out and catch the fish and have the skill, but man, you can get yourself out of it quickly. I mean, bad attitude, or like not being happy with how you're doing it yourself. Some people are. I'm really hard on myself. Like you can 100% take yourself out of it before you even get into it. And I could see where it would be a tough game. I mean, like talking with Drew, and like we talked about it off camera, like how we like to fish. That would have thrown a huge curveball to me. Like, it says a lot about your skill, and you saying it, your mindset. Seeing it kind of like taking their wind out of your sails, and then figuring out, okay, I'm gonna wing it. I'm just gonna do this, and kind of put your head down and grind. And I mean, it worked. I mean, you secured the AOI in second. I mean, were you mad at yourself that she snuck around, that Christine snuck around you, or was it the AOI was just like, no, this is cool, this is good enough?
Yeah, it was. By all means, I thought. I mean, complete honesty. When I caught that 20 at 2:00 and 14 seconds was the picture I submitted. I was making phone calls on my 4-mile trek back from where I caught that fish to a boat ramp where somebody picked me up, or Matt Miller picked me up. And that 4 miles, there was a lot of phone calls, and most of them involved excited 4-letter words. And I did it. I finally did it. I finally won a Hobie. And AOI was the bonus. Because I mean, I've never won a Hobie. I've led a Hobie on 2 different occasions, and it's very, very frustrating to be leading after day 1 and not finish any better than 6th or 8th or whatever both times I've finished. It's not been any better than 6th or 8th. The 4 miles back was probably the longest I've ever been that excited, because I caught the biggest fish that I'd caught there the whole week. And that's probably one of the biggest fish I'd caught in 2 months, because it would just randomly, wherever we were going locally was awful. I was struggling. I won a local tournament with like 48 inches on 3 fish or something like that, just a few weeks
Grinder.
before. And it's, that fish might as well have been 24 25 inches when I got it in the boat, because I mean, it seemed like that fish was worth an AOY in first place, which by all means would have been more money than I make doing that and standing out in the street all day than I make in a whole year. And I thought in the snap of fingers, I had all that coming to me. And I get along with Christine. Christine's a great angler. I have by no means nothing against Christine. I even texted her after the KBN podcast and was like, hey, I hope none of that I said came across the wrong way, because I'm glad you won. But up until they said her name or my name for second, I won. And there was nobody telling me any different. And that's the first time I've ever felt like I had gotten over that hump to win a Hobie. And from that 4 mile pedal back to loading up to driving 85 miles in a 45 and God knows where, Alabama and Georgia, all the way back to check in. I mean, I showed up and they said, all right, go take a lie detector test. And that guy's trying to put them little things on my hand, and my hand's like this. And that guy's like, sir, before we get started, you are going to need to calm down. And I said, man, I said,
Good luck.
I'm freaking pumped. And I just, even when it was just us two, and I knew she had a few inches on me from the day before. I think she was in third or fourth going into the last day. I mean, up until they said my name, that was my money. That was my trophy. I had sweeped it. I had all my boys there. They were hyping me up, and I just, that's one of those things. I wouldn't trade it for anything, because when the time comes, and like I said, even podcast or whatever, when the time comes, and it's going to come, when I win a Hobie, there is no one that's going to appreciate that more than me, because from out the gate, from the first Hobie Bass Open at Chickamauga, where I led the first day, I mean, it's been, that's the goal, and there's nothing less than that goal that matters. I mean, you can ask people. I've been in 20th going into the second day of Hobie Bass Opens on Kentucky Lake, and I'm figuring out the math, and I'm like, okay, I'm in 20th. I'm not going to win. I'm going to go home. And Eufaula was very good for me to stay in that mindset going into it of, hey, it's not about win or nothing. And just being able to stay mellow the whole time. I've got a great fishing partner, Eric Thompson, that we've talked about a lot, that I talk about all the time, because he's a very mellow person, and is always, who says I'm not going to catch 5 fish on my last 5 casts of the day, like some people catch 5 fish on their first 5 casts of the day. And man, for the longest time, I've never been in that mindset, but I needed that thought process on day 2 of Eufaula, because I had one fish at like 10:30, and day 1 I was culling fish with inside of my truck at 8:45, 9 o'clock, and just such a different day, even though I knew it was going to be tougher. I mean, I came around the corner, I caught 3 fish in probably 5 minutes. And that's what saved day 2 to keep me alive. And then I had to grind for number 5, because number 5 didn't come easy either. A lot of that is, nothing mentally stimulating, and nothing in your mind happens in the snap of a finger when you're trying to grow yourself as a better angler or golfer or whatever else it might be. It's you've got to have a way to take your mind off the avalanche before it happens. And I found listening to music when I'm starting to spin out is unbelievably healthy for me. And it doesn't even matter what music.
Just kind of a distraction.
Just a distraction. I mean, sometimes I'll get to singing on the water, and it's one of them things. I like singing. I'm not a great singer, but I enjoy it. I mean, I like listening to a lot of good country music, a lot of Texas country music. And but some days, it gets, you get to listen to some of those, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna switch it up, and I'll listen to Bruno Mars, because we got some friends that listen to Bruno Mars, and we call it Big Fish Bruno Mars Radio. And we've had instances where we put on some Bruno Mars, we're on a float or something, we're jamming on a speaker, and somebody catches a freaking donkey. And a lot of people, you hear it growing up, oh, you can't make too much noise, you can't make too much noise. And I think a lot of that's just excuses, both mentally and physically, where you're just making excuses for yourself or the fish or whatever it might be. And I think just having music or whatever else that you need, or having a conversation with your friends, anything to get you in that mental window that you have to be successful on anything, to keep yourself in that little area to where you're focused and you're also relaxed, and to balance that, whether it's radio or whatever else, who cares, figure out what it is. I like to take I used to never eat on the water at all. I used to barely as much as take a bottle of water with me. That's probably as much as being 19 and 20 and stupid as it is, anything. But, as I realized some things that'll help, making sandwiches the night before, being prepared just in general, and, going out, listening to music. When you go on a long pedal, which I tend to do always at some point, or whether it's load my stuff up and change boat ramps, having some food to just eat and kind of just chill. And you don't have to have anything crazy, it's just, something simple. I keep Fig Newtons in my truck 24/7, 365. It does not matter. I almost always have a pack of Fig Newtons in my truck, and the little mini packs, because man, I swear I've had more days, whether it's work or fishing or whatever, saved by some Fig Newtons in my truck is what should even be remotely sensible.
Mine, I'm the same way. Mine's the toasted cheese peanut butter filled crackers, the orange crackers from the gas station.
Yeah,
I buy them by the case from Sam's Club, man. That's I don't know how many times, like you're saying, I'm like, okay, I just need to chill for a minute. I'll sit back, I'll eat 2 or 3 of them. And I know twice at the Bassmaster on Pickwick this year, because I was struggling, I had heat exhaustion, I had a cracker in my mouth and would hook a fish. It's just, I don't know, it just gives you something to think about, and I mean, that probably has nothing to do with it, but maybe it helped me mentally for a few seconds. Just, maybe I wasn't just rushing through that cast because I was frustrated. I was focused on that cracker,
Yeah.
But no, I definitely get that.
Yeah,
but
I think it's
no, go ahead.
how much good you can do by just trying to get back to neutral. I mean, I'm by no means a mental expert, but I feel like over the last 7, 8 years now that I've been fishing kayak tournaments, that I feel like I could arguably, I mean, no one can measure their mental state, but I feel like I have mentally grown way more than I have as just a fisherman. I'm still out there just covering water, but that part of it is unbelievably huge for me.
Oh yeah, and a lot of that just like anything else with fishing or golf or any sport, just like that the talent and the experience comes in time. so does getting your head around it. I mean, the first couple of years I did it, I mean, and even still, I still have bad like head games, when I fish. But you start to, like, the big thing is realizing the problem and like admitting it to it. That's something that's great about you talking about everything you've talked about in both of these episodes. Like, you just talking about your feeling, how you felt, the excitement and then the low and everything, and being open about it. Some folks will not talk about it like that, which I think puts you at a disadvantage.
Mm.
Pent up any kind of stress, it'll negatively affect you. And I mean, just openly talking about it, I mean, it may just make you feel better and even open up a different view on it later. And
Mm.
so, props to you on that. uh I want to take a small step back, just because we've hit all around it, but just give us a breakdown of the tournament itself. Day 1 through 3. Just we've heard, like you said, you called a 20 in the last few minutes and all this stuff. Just lead us through how it kind of all went. Any fun catches or key catches or just whatever.
Yeah, I'll throw one day of practice in there too, if you don't mind.
Okay, nah, go for it, man.
Um, I practiced, I think 3 areas. They all ended up being really good areas, best I can tell from talking to people and whatnot. After the tournament here in Doc Talk, whatever. But it was. I looked at an area, kind of upper lake, and went to check out an area that looked really good on a map that had a lot of just different stuff. And that's normally where I like to try to start, is somewhere that has a lot of different things, and maybe I can just catch up on something easy, that you don't have to cover a lot of water on. And a lot of that stuff didn't have anything. There were no lily pads there. And I went and looked around, and there was a creek close by. So I went as far back up into that as I could and caught a few fish in kind of a weird area that I didn't understand at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept getting bites in this one little area, and it was very weird. I had no idea why there were fish there. And I left. I was like, okay, that's a reasonable area that I think I can get some bites in if I can't find anything else. So I left, went to what was the complete opposite. It was middle of the lake. There was the most rock I could find. And I get there, and there's a couple other people there. Somebody, Vinny, had just caught an absolute giant when I came around the corner. And I was like, okay, well, this is a productive area. Christine was there, throwing a buzz bait and covering water. And I basically, as I was coming across, I could hear her buzz bait, and I probably watched her fish an area 150 yards long, and I never heard anything that happened with that buzz bait to lead me to want to fish that whole area that she was fishing. It was just basically a riprap that was
Mm-hmm.
probably half a mile long, and I think she fished all half a mile of it. And I realized that I probably could count topwater off first thing without even really hardly throwing it at all, just
Right.
because I mean, I could listen to her throw that thing and throw that thing and throw that thing, and I swear I could hear that thing for I don't know how long, because the wind was blowing in my direction. I could hear her beat that thing off a rock from 200 or 300 yards away. And I didn't hear any blow ups, and she said she hadn't got any blow ups on the buzz bait, so I was pretty confident that I didn't have to bother throwing a buzz bait in practice. And went back to the creek that was close by at that area after cranking some riprap and fishing the little culverts area, and didn't get anything. Went to the back of that creek, caught a fish, and on my way out, the first kind of piece that I really clicked together on Eufaula was a really nonchalant looking area. I got 2 bites, and there was kind of a bend in the creek, and the way the sun was shining down, it was the only shaded little area in this creek. And the first thing I thought was, that's really weird. It's cold. I shouldn't be getting bites in shade alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at my map, and just the way the sun was laid out on Apple Maps or whatever, there was shade on the water in the picture on Google Maps when I zoomed in. And I went back to where I'd fished earlier that morning, zoomed in, same scenario. There's a bend in the creek. There's the sun's on the same area. I got bites in an identical spot. There was no reason when I looked at the depth, there was no particular reason for there to be there. There was no real grass there or anything like that. It was just a really random area, but the only thing that was there was shade in both areas. So,
and finding it in two places, replicating it that quick means, I mean, that's a flag right there. Like, okay,
hours apart, and it didn't click at the first spot because you're not looking for shade in November.
No,
that's not my first go-to by any means. Especially
maybe in Florida, but not here.
Yeah, especially not in the morning. Maybe midday, evening. If you get a warm day, but especially not first thing in the morning, which is why I didn't recognize it by any means at first. And the first morning of the tournament, I put in somewhere on day one that I hadn't put in before. I get there was no one there, and Russ and Lambert came in, barreling in last minute, which I'm sure, a lot of people know why they were barreling in by now. I'm not going to get into that by any means. But I was like, what in the world are they doing here? And they kind of explained, hey, we're going across a lake. And I was like, oh, cool. I've still got this spot to myself. This is fantastic. And I fished all the shade around the boat ramp and fished the laydowns where, it would make sense for fish to be, when it's cool, you get a cooler front. And I mean, I caught them very, very well. I mean, that was the best I'd caught them in the couple days that I was there. And so I literally loaded up at 9:30 or so. I had like 81 inches by 8:30, and then cold one pretty quick when I went to my creek, and cold one right where that little shady spot was. So I was like, okay, cool. This is still a thing. I'm leaving. I loaded up, drove to where I practiced, the first place I went to, and Jay Wallen was there and Cody Milton was there, and they were also catching fish on day one. And I was like, okay, that's a really good spot, but I'm not going to go check that out. It was a pretty good pedal. I was just curious who all was there for my day 2 plan or day 3 plan or whatever else. Because there's really not a whole lot of fish and a whole lot to fish in that area. So I was like, surely one of them found it. They're both great anglers. And then later in the day, I went way upriver to see how many people were in an area where some of the guys that I pre-fished with caught really big fish in practice. And I kind of knew they were all in a general area, so I was going to put in, and I had plenty of time, and I was going to go like 2.5 miles upriver. And I get about halfway up through there and didn't really see anybody. I was like, there's a bunch of guys up here catching fish. Everybody recognizes vehicles in the parking lot. There were guys that were doing absolutely unbelievable, leading the tournament even. Like 2 of the top 3 were there. And I knew a bunch of big fish had been caught in practice there just by who was there and who was posting fish in practice and all that. Mm-hmm. And I get about halfway up through there, and I'm wore out. I've pedaled a lot, looking around by that point, and the camera boat comes up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to make it up to this creek. I've already got a good limit. I'm just kind of looking around, and I'm hoping I can just make it up there to this creek and look around because it looks like it's an untouched area. It's probably not been practiced a whole lot in. And I don't remember who was in the camera boat, but they're like, oh, yeah, that's where we're headed now. And I'm like, what in the world? Oh. And I was like, man, that's a bummer. Cause I ended up going up there, and there were 2 guys that were, in the top 10 that were up there in that creek that I passed. And one of them that was, I don't remember if he was leading or whatever the first day. I'm not going to, destroy anybody's spots, but there was a lot of fish in there. I went and looked around, and the way the creek kind of curved, I didn't think that they might have went in or fished whatever side. But basically, I looked around, kind of was like, okay, well, I'm going to make a few casts in here. It's at the end of the day. I'm just going to see if I can catch one big one. and I made probably 10 casts and caught 4 fish in this little shaded area. And they were all small, but I was like, I'm on to something.
Right.
Without a doubt, even if they're small up here. So I just left, and I didn't even fish all the way up to the end of the day. I just went in and started pedaling back. I was like, by that point it was probably half.
Got your information.
So,
You know.
yeah, I mean, it clicked. I mean, the fish were smaller, but I knew big fish were in the area, so it was more or less one of those like, backup plans again, back up to my backup plan. And then day 2 really, really threw a wrench in what I was wanting to do. I started out in that same area that I started out in day 1, and probably made 2 or 3 casts and lost a fish. And I was like, well, cool, they're still here, no biggie. And then probably fished 20 or 30 yards and caught one. I was like, all right, cool, I'm good. This is solid. And then I caught like a pickerel or whatever they call them down there.
Yeah, chain pickerel.
And then I had another one come off, and I was like, all right, then you start to wonder. And there were 3 other guys there at my ramp on day 2, and they all went towards my creek. And I was like, man, that kind of sucks, And then I was like, well, the only thing over there is that creek, even though it's, probably a mile, everybody here can do a mile. Everybody at TOC is doing a mile. That's not a big deal. And I was like, all right, no biggie. I'll just let them have that. If my spots that I caught fish yesterday morning aren't doing well, then, maybe I caught them all out of that creek too. So I was like, no big deal, and try to stay positive. So I turned around and went 2 miles north, pedaling sight unseen to a creek. And I went through and fished all the shaded area and didn't have a bite. And by that point, it's 10:30, and I'm about to come absolutely unglued. There's bass boats in my area. It's windy. I'm thinking I went too far from the truck to go down and relocate to try to catch 4 fish. And I'm stuck between just fishing that area slow and just hoping it pays off, or crossing the main lake in 25-mile-an-hour winds to fish another creek sight unseen. And I basically just hit that whole area another time, and I get to a little bend in the creek, which I'd already fished, had shade, and I swapped colors of jackhammer, and I caught 3 fish in probably 5 minutes, and they absolutely choked that thing, and I absolutely could not believe it. And I fished that area, did not get another bite. And it's noon, and I needed 1 fish, so I basically decided to roll the dice, and I crossed over. It took me about half hour, 40-ish minutes or so to cross over all the way. And the creek split, and I had maybe an hour and a half at that point. And I basically was like, they both look similar. They both have, reasonable amount of shade on both. And I took the right-hand side, and I went down through there, fished the shade, didn't get a bite, came back out, and there was like a couple laydowns, and I fished those laydowns and had an absolute giant come off. And at that point, my heart sunk, because I'm like, man, I ain't had a bite.
That was my chance.
Outside of a 5-minute flurry, I haven't had a bite since the sun came up out of that random 5-minute flurry. And then I started thinking, like, that's not the way I want to think, because that's how you turn into avalanche mode.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, I gotta bite off this laydown. Maybe, there's another laydown, 100 yards up through here. Maybe I can get bit off it. Maybe they're starting to come alive. Maybe they're, just more isolated over here because it's closer to a boat ramp and it's been beat up. So I pedaled up to it real quick and caught an absolute line burner 12-inch fish with like less than an hour to go. And I was so excited with that 12-inch fish. No doubt in my mind. And I thought I heard somebody hollering in the other side of that split. And I was like, man, I there's got to be fishing here. There's bass boats all in here, and I end up culling like 3/4 inch off that 12 3/4, which doesn't sound like much, but it really helped, mentally to be culling fish. And when I got back to the boat ramp, G was there right behind me. And I was like, man, I don't know where in the world you came from, but he was asking for a ride. I was trying to get a ride. Shout out to Brady Stores. I met Brady this weekend. Brady's fantastic. He gave me a ride. Great dude, living out of his car, traveling around. He really helped me out, give me a ride because I had no real plan at that point. But G said he had came down and was needing a ride too. And I never asked G because I ended up not going there the next day. But I wouldn't doubt it if G was on that other side because there wasn't a whole lot to fish in that area other than that creek. But
Right.
G absolutely wrecked him that day, and I just was kind of hands off that area. But when I went home that night, well, actually, we had to go back to the captain's meeting area, the lodge. After Brady dropped me off, I drove around for as long as I could looking for places on the upper end of that lake where people were still wrecking them after day 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And I was pulling stuff up, driving through, was ending up at gates that were ended up being private property and was having to turn around on gravel roads. And it seemed like everywhere I went to check out places, it was dead ends. But I realized as I was doing that was, man, there's a 2 or 3 creek stretch right here between these 2 ramps that are almost impossible to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And I went home that night, tried to think of every way in the world to get in. I was looking at people's Far Wide apps, looking at Onyx apps, looking to figure out what all was public property to slide in on, and every bit of that whole area was private. No matter how it looked on a map and how good it looked or how different dirt roads and stuff, there was no way I could get in. So on day 3, I literally swung for the fences, did what I like to do on Seminole and a lot of here at home was basically put in and float down to another ramp and just try to fish. That there was 2 or 3 creeks right there that when you map the whole lake out with boat ramps and slides and everything else, there was a whole area where it was just vacant. There was nothing around for 2 or 3, 4 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And the pin I dropped to look at, which I never could make it to, directly across from that little pin was where I ended up catching that 20-incher at the end of the day. And I literally spent the entire day fishing new water on day 3 that I had never seen, and I absolutely freaking wrecked them. If I got a bite, I'd turn around and fish it with both jackhammer colors. If there was a lay down, I flipped it, and I literally caught an unbelievable amount of fish on day 3, except for when the camera boat was on me, and I lost every fish that I hooked, including an absolute giant. And I just, well, it was absolute giant. It was probably a 19 or 20-inch fish, and it just, at the time I was like, well, there went some money, because it was one of those things where that fish obviously would have helped. Every time you catch a 19 or 20-inch fish, it's going to help unless you're Mark Pendergraph and the Bassmaster on Possum Kingdom.
Yeah.
A 19 or 20-inch fish helps everyone almost every tournament ever. But I hadn't had a bite in a while, so I kind of just looked at them and I was like, you know what? I'm glad y'all are here. Which is something you don't hear a lot of guys say about the camera boat. They blame it on the camera boat. Oh, can't camera curse, GoPro curse, whatever. And I told them, I said, look, I said, I'm glad you're here. I would have had a meltdown if I'd have lost that fish and there was nobody around. Guaranteed. And I kept on trucking, kept covering water, kept sticking to what I was doing, I'd go in a creek, some of them, they thought I was crazy, I'm sure, because some of those locals that were moving those guys around those bass boats. Because I'd go in a creek and basically look around and be like, nah, trust me, this doesn't look right. And I would leave. And I was just covering water. And I think I probably did 12 or 13 miles, maybe 14. I didn't ever do it. I just know that I pedaled all day, and I still had 4 miles to go at the end of the day.
Jesus.
And it took literally up until the last little bit of me fishing. I came into another creek that was split, and I was like, you know what? Yesterday I did the right-hand side of the creek. Today I'm going to do the left-hand side. And I went down through there, and I coaled probably 3/4 of an inch. And then I went to the right-hand side, which is where I'd originally wanted to get to. And I was like, well, I'm going to stop this left-hand side just a little short. It ain't seemed to work. And I went to the right-hand side. As soon as I got over there and fished the left bank on the right-hand split, I coaled like 8 1/4 inches in the last probably 10 minutes.
Jesus.
Between three coals. And it was unbelievable. I mean, it was one of those things where I almost wished I'd have fished the whole area, like that whole bank. Because, I mean, I probably made 15 casts on it and coaled 3 times.
Jeez.
And I just, as much as you could say, oh, what if I'd spent the day there? What if I started there? If I'd have started there, I probably wouldn't have caught the 20 at the end of the day. Or, who knows? I might have caught it at the beginning of the day. It's hard to play, what ifs with that kind of thing. But
right,
I fished until the absolute last second. And I basically threw nothing but a green pumpkin jackhammer and a white and chartreuse jackhammer the entire day. And then really the entire weekend. Yeah, and really the entire weekend. I basically didn't fish slow enough to even throw anything else, unless if I had a fish miss it, I would throw a white fluke in, and that was the same for both day 1 and day 2. I'd start out throwing a white frog, and if they missed it, I caught a couple throwing white frog
or follow up after it.
Follow it, yeah. And then if they missed the white chatterbait, I'd throw the white fluke in there. And if they missed the green pumpkin chatterbait, then I'd throw a D-bomb in there real quick. But I mean, that was it.
Taking a step back to talk about a couple of things, something that I liked about your day 1 was, once you got your 81 inches, you kind of, everybody knows a 3-day tournament. It's not about the one good day, it's a consistency. Yeah. And 80 inches plays in most any tournament. Does it hold you in the top 5? Not in a lot of the occasions, but it's definitely something to build off of in a second day. You see it in every tournament series kayak angling's part of that have multi-day tournaments. It's really cool that you got to that point and you were like, okay, this is working. I've got to go find and test more of it. And you had time, Yeah. You viewed it as I'm sitting in a good place. And that's just something I wanted to point out for people listening to this is, that's like the professional attitude of it. That's a real game plan. That's a real, like a lot of people just, think fish and keep grinding. They're thinking, I got to get the most out of today I can. I got to, that can turn into burning up a spot or, missing key pieces of like details to your puzzle you're putting together. Burning you out on the next day. It's cool to, good Lord, here we go again. I got it. It's cool to see because you're not the only person that's done it. And I just don't feel like a lot of people get to hear about it or realize that there's so much more to it, like you see it a lot when you watch the bass boat guys, on MLF, they'll hit that like, okay, they'll all talk about it. Like, okay, I think it's going to take 40 pounds, day 1. So once I hit 40 day 1, I'm going to go looking. And, these are the guys making the big bucks and it's the same thing here. And y'all are doing it. The TOC is a good example of, like we said before, the best anglers in kayak fishing right now that all qualified for this major event. And I'm sure a bunch of folks are doing things like that, pack up, move and looking to be able to, even if it wasn't looking for something for day 2, finding that spot you may need for day 3. And then the other thing I really wanted to hit was, did you ever come up with like a hypothesis on what it was about the shaded areas that was keeping the fish there?
Yes and no. I trust me. I thought every way in the world to why. I don't know how much alligators and fish interact, but all the alligators were on the sunny side. As soon as the sun would come up, you'd start seeing alligators all over the sunny side. And as soon as the sun come up, I would start catching fish in the shade. Now, I'm a very, very big believer of shade and sun lines being ambush points for bait. Everybody knows a bass is an opportunistic feeder. I
Right.
think if you put something in an area, especially where there's toothy critters, for lack of better explanation, if you're catching fish that can be eaten by other fish, you'll see that. I kind of learned that from fishing for redfish and stuff and intercoastal stuff. If you put something in front of those fish, I don't give a crap if it's there's a bait that a buddy of mine throws down there in Louisiana called Freddy the Frog. It's a giant swim bait that has a frog with crazy legs that doesn't even, it doesn't make sense. I don't know if redfish eat frogs. Redfish will eat a D-bomb. Redfish is basically just bass fishing on steroids, in my opinion, because if you put anything in front of a redfish when it's up shallow looking for stuff, we've caught them on D-bombs. I just go down there and throw a jackhammer just because hookup ratio is good and it creates splash and everything else. And I've already got one tied on anyway, so I might as well just throw it when I'm down there. And we've caught them on all kinds of stuff and just try to see what we could catch them on, because it's kind of a eat or be eaten scenario down there in salt water. So if you get in an area, if you go south or even up north where there's muskie and pike or pickerel or whatever else in the world down there, it's either you eat and get bigger or you stay small and get eaten because you're the runt. So I don't know how much bass and alligators interact. I just know gators are on the sunny side, bass were on the shaded side. I don't know if they hide better in that area. I don't know if there might have been a little bit of grass that was growing in maybe some of the shady areas, different types of grass. I don't know. I really don't have an exact science of why it was cold in November and they were fishing the shade.
My best guess would have been what you kind of hit on, not the predatory aspect of it, but the cover, more or less. If the grass is mostly dead, the pads are few and far between. They basically got laydowns, rocks if you can find them. There's not as much ambush area, and the dark may just give them that little bit of an advantage. And because that's the only thing I could assume.
I'm all for a shade pattern. We fish the shade pattern on the rivers quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
That's smallmouth. I heard it from an old timer. Fish don't have eyelids, so they got to get somewhere where they can get some natural shade.
A little break in it.
Yeah. So they I don't care where they're hiding. As long as I can find a few of them.
Well, it's a killer story, man. You put it together for sure. And again, for anybody that didn't catch part 1 where we talked about, we kind of did it out of order, but I wanted to get to the good stuff quick. I wanted you to have plenty of time to talk about the best part.
Yeah.
But everybody go back and listen to that. And it's cool to hear the story. Because it was a bunch of ups and downs, really.
Absolutely, yeah.
A good first day where you got on them good enough to go try and capitalize on a plan. Day 2 was a grind, and then day 3 it's a big run and hoping for the best, and and then you said earlier, thinking that you finally closed it all out. Just so much emotion, and that can drain on you. And I mean, how hard was it to keep yourself composed when they called your name at second? When you were,
Um,
like you said, man, you were just, this is mine. I have done this. How did you keep it together? Because I would have probably blown up. Like, I'd have fell apart.
yeah, I've had a few people tell me like, how in the world did you say anything? I'd have been like, son of, what in the world? How what happened? What the crap? What in the world? And everybody knows that I have no shortage of words. I mean, you've learned that over our last couple. I mean, I can talk, I can ramble. Um, and if you watch the first of that when I talked to AJ, I really didn't know what I was gonna say. Because if you watch the AOY part, everybody knows I hollered "Let's go." Whether it's on Facebook in all caps when I get excited, when somebody I know and like does something great, I was waiting. It was let's go. It's that moment was so close. That was all I could think about saying. And when the time came to thank everybody for second, when they were handing me things, I didn't look at it. I didn't I didn't care what that plaque looked like. I didn't care what the check said. In that moment, the only thing I could think about was, oh my God, what am I gonna say?
Yeah.
Um, and you could hear me. I mean, I can just picture it plain as day. I'm looking at the table full of my boys in the back. Nothing AJ said was registering at all in my head. I mean, he could have been telling me whatever in the world. I have no idea what AJ said. Not in the slightest clue. And I'm looking at my boys and they're going, they're looking at each other like, what's going on? Everybody's looking around. I mean, everybody, as soon as they said my name, everybody was like, there was the collective of, oh my gosh, Christine did it. Congratulations. That's awesome. And
And oh
everybody,
my God, no
and oh
way.
my God,
Like,
what just happened? And
yeah.
trying to filter through hearing, I mean, no one's trying to be quiet when that happens. Trying to filter through all of that. Like I said, no idea what AJ said, and I just remember going, wow, and try to process everything and catch up and hit the fast forward button through everything that AJ was saying to the point where I could catch up and kind of actively listen to him. Because I mean, everybody knows when you're standing there, that's the most important thing going on at the moment. That's where the camera's looking, and I'm just very, I'm just very thankful that I got through that part of it and just sounding reasonable. Because
Oh, it's
I
hard, man, because like playing off people's reactions is like you look at your table with your boys in it because this is your support system,
yeah,
When I'm looking at my support system and they're falling apart, that's
yeah,
not going to help me out at all.
yeah,
So I
absolutely.
understand, man. Golly, I can't imagine how hard that was. And you did it great. Great as you could. I mean, if you had literally just stood up and said, "Man, I don't know what to say. I'm at a loss for words. I appreciate everybody and everything," and walked off the stage, I would have understood like
Right.
100%. You're good.
Yeah. It was and I honestly even thinking about it now as I kind of stuttered just a second ago, it's a very weird feeling when I think about that still of just how leading a tournament after day one is a very, very good feeling, and winning a tournament's a very, very good feeling. But thinking you've won a tournament and it not happening is 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 a very weird feeling. and by no means am I wanting to take anything away from Christine. You know, she grinds all year. I mean, everybody sees that in her YouTube videos and all that, and is happy as I am for her. It's just that's something that I won't forget, and that's going to make whatever the first Hobie tournament is that I do win. That feeling is going to be hopefully forgotten about. A, so I don't have to think about it no more, and B, hopefully the follow up to that accomplishing feeling is you know, if I when I win a Hobie, I hope it's close. I hope I get that same feeling again and get the realization of it. You know, as much as I'm happy with however that would work out, you know, whether you win by 30 inches, I mean, I don't care. You know, that's the goal from here on out. There's part of me, if you know, if we're being honest, which everybody I hope knows that that's 100% what I'm about, 24/7, even if it pisses somebody off or whether it's whatever. I want to be known for being straightforward and honest and 100% real. I'd be lying if I said I didn't hope it was close. Just that feeling is there again, and the full spectrum of that moment is realized.
Right. No, I feel you, man. I mean, I can't think of a word to say for it, but that is probably the best way I would want to experience, or that anybody would want to experience, having experienced it from where you are. And I hate that we're bringing it up again. You know, I like doing these stories like we're doing a little bit after a tournament happens. I noticed even with G, we've been getting, like, we usually focus on getting these people in and you right after these tournaments. Man, the interviews have been so much better after there's been some time to sit and soak on it, that I kind of don't want to cover them right after anymore. Because, I mean, right after, you're burnt out, you know? But the best conversations have been, you know, revisiting these after you've had time to think. You think of things that you forgot about, that you maybe not talked about yet, or, you know, you're in such a brain fog. But yeah, man, I appreciate you bringing it back up, because I know it still, you know, it still hurts. I know it does, you know, but, you know, a lot of great things happen. It's going to put you in a way better place, even mentally going into it. Because now, I mean, it's just like, I feel like you're going to grind even harder now. Like,
Oh yeah,
you have to, man.
It never
Like,
stops. Yeah, I mean, if yeah, I always want there to be no shortage of effort on my end. And I even told the camera boat when it was following me around and I was doing miles between creeks and stuff. And I told them, I said, look, I said, there's no shortage of effort. There's no second guessing. There's no, what if I did this? What if I did that? Because I had day 2 to second guess. You know, I didn't go to my creek that I found in practice and I caught one fish out of on day 1. And while we're talking about that, none of those guys, after I talked to them, none of those guys ever went to that creek. They never did. And who's to say if I would have caught, you know, a few more inches on day 2 that I wouldn't have, you know, swung for it on day 3. So I'm not hating on day 2 by any means, because it very well led me to what I did on day 3, because I had to, you know, swap it up.
right.
But day 2's a day that, you know, when hindsight's 2020, day 2's the day that gave me problems. And that's it's part of it, you know.
Oh yeah.
But day 2 was the day that even though I would like to have it back, no second guesses. You know, I went across. I did the full paddle across the lake in the middle of the day, and took 40 minutes to get over there, and didn't have a ride, and just found somebody that was fishing our tournament to give me a ride. And you know, I don't regret it in the slightest. You know, the effort's there, and if I have to grind that much harder to you know, come out on top, it's you know, I'll take a third sandwich with me on the kayak, and I'll turn the music up louder, and you know, we'll grind that much harder.
Yeah, man. No, you learn to, because I've had a lot of, not on the national level, but I've had a lot of almosts that I blamed on a lot of what ifs.
Mm.
And it means nothing. Like
Absolutely.
you made your decision, and you got where you were because of your decision. Like just because that decision wasn't where you wanted it to be, there's no saying if you went to that creek, anything would happen. It could have got worse. You could have lost the AOI, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it takes a big person to realize that. And again, I mean, I just said it, but people should watch out for you, man. Next year, I think it's, you know, you've came close, like you said, in Hobies before, but you didn't get to that feeling and that this is mine until this one. I can't wait to see the Hobies next year, man. I'll be putting my money on Jordan for sure, just because I think you're going to come out ready to just wreck some people, just to get over that feeling, like just that, like.
Well, we're hitting. Me and the boys were talking today and yesterday. We're coming out the gate swinging as far as next year goes. We're gonna do a Western swing like we did last year, where we did Oklahoma with Broken Bow for the Hobie and Fork for the Bassmaster in back-to-back weeks. This year we found the only back-to-back tournament, and it's Bassmaster at Fork, which I absolutely hate. I hate Fork. I don't want to go back to Fork. But you know, if we're getting one out of the way at the start of the season, I'm getting Fork out of the way, and then we're gonna go spend a week on Toledo Bend. I've never been on Toledo Bend. But we're gonna go, and I'm gonna throw the freaking kitchen sink at them first out of the season, and if I gotta come out swinging and air mail the whole first thing, I promise I'm gonna come out swinging good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, man. And since you brought it up, you know, we talked about it briefly. You know, Hobie's your deal, and these episodes talking with you, I mean, completely tells us why. You know, but since we talked last, the Bassmaster schedule for 2022 did come up. For anybody listening that hasn't seen it, I'll just go over it real quick. They are playing with a little bit of 2-day stuff, as well as they added a AOI system for all of the people that were really hating on it for not having it. Well, they're going to give it a shot, which we kind of expected. But the first event, like Jordan said, February 5th and 6th, Lake Fork in Texas. March 2nd and 3rd is the championship at Richard B. Russell Lake in South Carolina. March 19th, Harris Channel Lakes in Florida, which I think could be pretty cool. But I will not be making the trip down for that one. April 16th, Grand Lake and Grove, Oklahoma. Kind of curious to see how that one goes, because a lot of the locals out there talk about that lake's like heavily restricted to kayakers and canoers. I'm sure Bass probably got like a special permit, but none of the details are out yet, so who knows. They're coming to Lewis Smith Lake in Alabama, May 21st. Even though that's like 45 minutes from me, you will not catch me on that freaking body of water, probably ever again, because I hate that place. And then what's that?
Is that a tough one?
Not for some. You know, it's the big boat series go there a lot. My thing with it is it's super pressured. It's like I would compare it to Gunnersville kind of pressure. Tons of tournaments, tons of boats. They do a big bass fest there every year. They'll have 200 to 500 boats for that. Is
that the Smith Lake where we had the Bassmaster kite thing a couple years ago?
That was Logan Martin.
I got
you.
Yeah,
that's on the Coosa.
Got you. I was there.
Lewis,
I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I was too. That is. I don't want to say it's similar fisheries, but they're both like you're going for big spots. That's your thing. You know, Smith Lake's deep.
I like big spots.
Clear. I do too, and that's what I hate that lake for, is I just can't figure it out. And I don't know. There is a lot of creeks.
Shallow spotted bass, I might show up. If they're deep spotted bass, I'm out.
See, that's the thing, is it has some really good creeks that run for, 30 miles away from that lake. But with the national trail rules, I think that I can't wait to see them put the boundaries on it. Because like we had the state championship for Alabama there this year, and a buddy of mine got way up a creek and absolutely destroyed largemouth all day. I think he caught like one good spot, but I bet you could never get there in one of the national tournaments with the way the boundaries work. But and then the last one for the year will be October 8th and 9th, and it's going back to Pickwick. They'll be stationed in Counts, Tennessee again. I am looking forward to that one just because, again, I'm 45 minutes from that lake too, and I had a really really good thing going that tournament. Last day of pre-fishing, I made 2 casts. I caught a 7, and then I turned around 30 minutes later, made a cast. I caught an 18-inch. So I caught a 23, and then I caught an 18-inch smallmouth, left my spot. Was like, man, I got this, especially with one day tournament. I was like, man, if I got 2 big ones and 2 bites, I can get 5 to bite tomorrow. Yeah, got to my spot on tournament day. There was a couple of guys I know that had no idea Bassmaster was doing a kayak tournament there, and they had fished my spot then like right after I left all night.
Oh,
And I saw them there, told them what was going on, and they were like, "Oh," and I was like, "I gotta know, did you been catching them?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, we caught some 5s, a couple of 4s. You know, he caught his first 20," and I was like, "Oh god," and my heart sank. I should have just went home, but what are your thoughts on it? Because I'll go ahead and say it, and I'd run their stuff for our state for kayaks. I wasn't that impressed with the schedule. It does have a couple of stops I like. I know there's a lot of hate about it not going up north, and I don't really understand why they didn't. Like normally, like the argument with going out west, when some of these big trails have went out west, they don't have the participation that make. I mean, if you put in a lot of time, effort, and money, and 40 people show up, I fully understand not going back.
right.
But I don't really understand taking like. I mean, you could say, yeah, y'all have hit lacrosse twice in a row, but people showed up, man. So,
Right.
but what was your thoughts?
I like the fork. Like we'll probably go to that, or we're planning on going to that. I'll probably go to Pickwick. I really like Pickwick from this year when Hobie was there. I might go to Lewis Smith just because I like spots, depending on if it's open or not. I'm probably not going to go to the Classic. I've never went down and fished the St. Johns River or basically anywhere in Florida other than just Seminole. Seminole's the most Florida I've fished, other than fishing for redfish down in Pensacola area. So I probably am not going to go to St. John's. It bothered me actually that they didn't have not necessarily a Northeast tournament, but I heard a rumor that there was going to be a tournament on the Susky, and
Right.
I love the Susky. It treated me very well this year. I kind of struggled up there the first year trying to basically fish it like the rivers here. I mean, it is a very good smallmouth river, but it's not identical to here. So I kind of had to, figure it out, fish it a little bit different, approach it a little bit different. But man, once you figure it out, it's very similar to here, just on a grander scale. Especially once they got a little bit more water in it this year compared to last year when we were up there. So when I heard that rumor, I was like, okay, we'll just double up at Susky this year, double up Pennsylvania, because I was looking forward to that, to be completely honest. And when the Bass schedule came out and it wasn't on there, I was like, I actually asked somebody, I was like, okay, well, if they didn't go to Susky, where'd they go up there then? And it was nowhere. And I was like, okay, well, and I literally, the next question was, well, when are they going to La Crosse? And I'm like, well, there's not La Crosse on there either. And I was like, okay, like where did they go then? Because I considered La Crosse to be kind of a lock. I mean, I understand you don't want to go there every year, but when there's that many people going and participation seems to be there, and
Go back.
yeah, I mean, might as well. I mean,
And nobody was complaining about it, man. No,
I'm
like
not a super big fan of lacrosse. It just didn't seem, I don't know. I just didn't have a great time there in the week that I was there. It wasn't terrible, wasn't awful. It's just a long drive for me to fish somewhere that I didn't, love. But I was told, like Susquehanna, if you get the water levels in the right area, then it sets up better for what I like to do. And I'm all for giving places plenty of opportunities. And I just, was surprised that there was nothing at lacrosse specifically, and Nothing up in the Northeast at all. I'm not a Northeast guy, but I feel bad for those guys. I mean, I understand that they didn't have the most. I mean, the tournament up at Vermont, Champlain, I think it had the lowest Hobie attendance, even less than Watts Bar, which was like 15 degrees. But I mean, at the same time, they still had 74 guys. I mean, Champlain's out in the middle of nowhere, as far as I'm concerned, just way out there. So I mean, I feel like given where the tournament was at, I mean, obviously it's not in California, but I mean, they didn't have. I mean, they still had 75 guys there, give or take. So,
right. I think I can't remember the numbers of the worst Bassmaster. I think it was in the 60s. I think. I don't know. It'll be cool to see if any more information comes out on it. Something, just a speculation that I kind of have is, I do think that an AOI structure will bring more people to it. I don't mean it as people picking one tournament series or the other, because I don't think anybody's ever going to do that, because we're kayak fishermen. Most of us are opportunists, and until, like we talked about before, there's the big, $100,000, $10,000 entry fee, whatever. You don't really have a reason just to fish one. Get out there and do it as much as you can. I think you may see, because I've noticed a lot of first timers spending that money at Bassmasters. And now I've not fished a Hobie. Could be the same thing with a Hobie, but
yeah.
I think I fished 5 of them total. And every one I've been to, there's been quite a few first timers. Like some guys, that's their first kayak tournament.
Kayak tournament, period. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's because Bassmaster's name. Yeah, it really is. And, maybe where you've got the guys like you and, and all of y'all's crew and the big names everybody knows, you always see them. They make sure they make as many of the Hobies as they can. You may see a lot of those unknowns getting into the Bassmaster stuff, because it may look like a chance, okay, well, they're going to be focused over here. I can make my name here,
Yeah.
And that's no way to make somebody say they're the best at anything. But I think that there's, like, I've talked about taking a step back this year, looking at all the schedules, especially since Bassmaster came out, because me and Brian Schiller that, created this podcast, we were going to follow Bassmaster around next year, and tag team it.
Yeah.
Looking at this schedule, me and him both agreed, like, as much as I hate to say it, we might hit a bunch of the KBF stuff. Because for me, I'm not trying to make an Angler of the Year run or win a championship. Like, I go to places that are like on my list of lakes I want to fish.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot of them this year. And that's literally the only defining factor. It has nothing to do with money, like who I'm fishing against. Because I should probably change it to having that mentality of I need to go and I want to win. But that's not, I'm never there. I'm just there, dude. Like, might fall in place one day. But looking at the Hobie schedule, like, because nobody else was doing the Susky, I want to go hit that one in July. That every time y'all hit Susky, everybody that fishes Hobie, God, that looks like something I could just get into. That's my kind of fishing.
It's fun. Yeah, absolutely. It's fun. I mean, as far as trying to prioritize things that you had mentioned, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, at least me personally, I can't speak for everybody. Obviously, it's Hobie far ahead, away from everybody, and then it's kind of local stuff. Just because we've got a great group of guys in Knoxville, but it takes a lot of focus just to win our local stuff. I mean, I didn't even runner up in our AOY this year. I finished third, and this year I'm going to sprinkle some KFL tournaments in. I talked to some guys. I'm going to fish some KFL events this year.
Yeah, I heard about it. I was excited about it. I was hoping Dan was listening.
Yeah, I mean, I that piqued my interest last year when I first heard about it, or whenever they started that. And there wasn't a whole lot of interest in Knoxville, and I didn't really want to drive back and forth, but I couldn't get the answers I wanted ahead of time. because I don't think they just didn't have them. It's not that they didn't want to give them. And the same way this year, I kind of hinted around at, hopping on full bore, and couldn't get the answers I wanted ahead of time. What happened?
Oh, you're good. It just got quiet, but I think I still got
Sorry.
you.
There we go. So I couldn't get the answers I was wanting ahead of time. So, I ended up just kind of hopping on, and talked to some guys last week with Dan, and I'm going to try to help out and fish, 3 or 4 events maybe with the oh my gosh, I can't even think of the
Put him on the spot. I feel
yeah.
you. I can't ever think of the new name because they were the Alabama Hammer team last year.
It's Kingfishers. I can't think of
the Coosa Kingfishers.
Coosa Kingfishers. There we go.
That's it.
And that's really cool, and I'm interested to see how that works, because I mean I have, there's it's very easy to be critical when you're not part of something. So I obviously haven't been super critical of KFL the way I have been of KBF, because I've been vocal about that. But I'm curious to see, from an inside perspective, and everybody knows, like I said, I'm very straightforward and honest. I just want to give an honest review of getting in and fish it and try it. And I think those guys are a great group, like a very competitive group when you look at all the teams and look at the area and look at what they're going to be fishing. And I'm interested to see how that works. If it takes off, fantastic. That's something I might take more seriously the following year. But this is something that I'm looking forward to as much as just the newness of it, the shininess. You try something new, kind of thing.
Well, and something my granddad always taught me, was don't knock it till you try it. So that's my big thing about people that are real critical on things. So like people that are vocal about KBF, there's a reason,
Yeah.
But that's a reason
100%.
why me personally, I'm talking about taking a step into it next year. I've never fished with KBF before, so I don't technically have an argument. I can get into it next year, and I can either, I'll have my own opinion, and that's part of the reason why I want to do it. Something I'm like you talking about, KFL like having a place, or if it, becomes a big thing. You look at bass fishing now, like professionally, and it was always like FLW and Bassmaster were always like the traditional, like we've always known it. And then MLF came in and did something totally different. And I mean, it's a hit. Yeah. It could be the same thing where like Hobie and Bassmaster run like the OG versions of kayak fishing, and KFL's the MLF of kayak fishing, where it's something different that, it may because it's not like that. There is tons of killer anglers on these teams, people that fish these big trails.
And my initial thought, just initially last year, was, this is going to be something where a bunch of quote unquote online tournament guys are just going to cherry pick their events, and it's going to be whoever's on their home field advantage is going to win. And there was some events where somebody went in somewhere and won, but I think it's still, that's where you kind of end up, is kind of having everything, whoever's, home field is going to win. But I think as you get better and better anglers to show up and travel and things, and that can change, a lot easier that way. And you have more surprises and things like that, because, the more, controlled chaos you can have, the better, more excitement you have. So,
it is definitely something great about it was the big argument with, which now I don't have any problems with KBBT. When COVID happened, that was the smartest thing that came out of COVID for us, a way to keep going. But the critical argument of it was it's just honey hole fishermen, which I completely agree with,
And
I liked the KFL.
That's just not,
no,
I have no
interest. That's all online monthlies are.
Yeah. I have no interest in that.
No, I did one. One of the guys really wanted me to get in and give it a try. I gave it well, I gave it 15 minutes of a try. We were doing an event on Del Hollow, and I was traveling, and I literally only got to get on the water in our tournament hours for 15 minutes. I caught one fish, and I was proud of that one fish because I did it in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But I never had any problem with it. KFL, my biggest argument with it, and most of those guys, I know a lot of the team members will be like this. They need to be a little more transparent with details. Not like they're hiding anything. It's just a lot of the people I have, it's hard to get the info.
Yeah, and I'm Dan and Cole do a great job of kind of filling me in because I have a lot of questions because I'm new to this whole thing and there is some sort of an informational breakdown between kind of whoever's all running Greg or whoever's all running that and guys that are kind of getting into it. The information just kind of slowly trickles down. And,
right.
Which is fine if they're figuring it out that way. And it, maybe I'm just because of, where I'm coming in, there's fog in the distance. Maybe, that fog is essentially where they're figuring things out. And I'm just learning everything basically as quickly as they're putting out information, which is fine. That's just part of being new to something. You don't know where the informational barrier is.
Right.
What you're catching up to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think there is some of that. But like I talk with people like Dan, and now Dan's a different breed, man. Dan is a very technical person. Anybody that listens to this podcast know he was like podcast famous with us for spreadsheets on like fishing information. Like my man is detailed. So I am not surprised at all when he knows every detail of something because that's the thing he's going to get to the bottom of. But I'll talk to other people that have been a part of it that, like are in the middle of it and still like, I don't know. This is about all I figured out from it. And that'll change. I'm sure, it'll adapt and keep growing, but it's a cool concept and I think it'll have its place. Cause like something like you said, the way you thought it would be with the, like home field advantage always playing in it, man. Dan's team went down there and absolutely wrecked folks on their home waters. They put up like the biggest, I think outside of Mark Vandergraff and Joe McElroy's single days on Possum Kingdom.
Yeah,
I think it was Coley put up like one of the biggest single day sets of numbers ever. Like
really,
like third, yeah. I mean, and they were. I think they ended up driving to Texas or something on that, or maybe it was Florida. But they went down there to these guys' home waters and just gave them the business. Like, and that for me, I appreciated that just because it was like, well, that right there can disprove that theory that, we came to your spot and I still kicked your ass. Like, get over it.
I think the tournament you're referring to, I think they had like 192 inches on 10 fish, but the local Texas guys had like 205 or something like that.
Yeah.
Even though they wrecked them, I think they still end up losing. I think that was like their playoff.
No. Yeah, you're right. I've got two stories mixed up.
It was, regardless, it's impressive. You go anywhere and, a few guys that don't know an area can show up and catch 190 something inches on 10 fish. I mean, hats off to them. That's incredible. I mean, but man, that's, you're not losing too many of anything if you got 10 fish for over 200 inches.
Oh, and that's a loss I'll take. Like,
with if that's a loss, I'm shaking your hand and congratulations thing.
I think Dan caught like a 9-pounder in that one. Like, you can't be mad if you catch a 9 and can't win. Like,
that's
whatever.
that's a tough one right there. A tough place to go. If those guys are fishing that water next year, I hope that's one that I'm fortunate enough to go to at some point. If I'm filling in for somebody, I hope that's one I get to go to.
Heck yeah. Texas, like we talked earlier about how like Eufaula didn't quite live up to the big fish hype.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Lake Fork, the fishing was tough. I didn't find a fish under 3 pounds though. Like, I couldn't get over like that was the small fish, Like,
I didn't find a fish for 3 days in practice, and even during the tournament, I just caught a bunch of 14-inch buck bass. So I don't think I caught a fish on tournament day or in practice. I don't think if I caught 2 or 3 of them together, they weighed 3 pounds. So I don't know what part of Lake Fork you were on, but send me
all over that
Send
bad
me
boy.
drop me a location because I'm gonna go back there this year and I need some help, dog.
Well, hey, I'll be down there, man. We'll have to catch up if y'all do double dip, because I've thought about doing the same thing and hitting Toledo Bend with Hobie. We'll catch up while we're down there and at least because like I usually make like my first one like a vacation. I'm down there
Yeah.
for a week, so we kind of just mess around. You know, we found a really cool little bar spot down there with a little dance hall and a little pool hall in it. You know, but we'll catch up. Well, before we let you go, I didn't get a chance to let you do it last time. Take a minute and, tell us who and thank everybody that makes fishing easier for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. McKee Outdoors, they're a great tackle shop by the house here, man. They've been friendly to me since I was a 16-year-old kid running around buying Cincos so I could go fish some ponds. And I go in there and I sit down and I soak up so much information from a lot of those guys, and I think that's what a lot of young guys that are my age and younger kind of miss out on is going in and sitting down and having a conversation with those old guys that are in there hanging out. You know, a lot of those guys want to share information if you want to go listen, and I just encourage everybody. You know, McKee Outdoors is my local tackle shop. I encourage everyone to go to their local tackle shop. That's owned by, whoever it is in your community to go and hang out there, because there's a lot of good folks that are there, and I ain't never been in half of them, but I know that's true because that's just part of it.
Man, and you'll learn so much.
River Sports is my outfitter here in Knoxville that sells Hobies. I've been with them for like 5 or 6 years now. They really believed in me when I was like 18 or 19 and try to help me out with boats and things like that for a long time. And Ed's been in business like almost 40 years. I think they had their 38th anniversary this year. He's been all over the world, so he can help you out and kind of walk you through a lot of those situations that we look over with what particular type of socks to wear and everything like that. Because I'm one of those people, if it gets cold, I'm putting on 2 pairs of socks, but he told me how to layer them and all that. So shout out to Ed, and Ed's been great. And Brian Backa from Southeast Tackle he has all kinds of stuff. He does everything down there in Chattanooga. It's near Chickamauga. He's been great. Kayak Cushion makes those 14-mile pedals a lot easier on my.
I got so many of those things.
And that's the simplest, greatest thing that's ever been. And I was so critical of that when it came out. I'm like, y'all are paying how much for a cushion? And I'm like,
then you get one and you're like,
my strap messed up on one of mine because I yanked on it too hard right before we went, and I'm an idiot, and I feel like I'm like, man, I'm gonna yank on this thing, and so I don't have to worry about it coming off when we're moving. But and I yanked on that thing too hard, and then when I get to the next stop, and I'm like, man, I will give somebody $80 for a cushion if y'all will let me have one. I'm not freaking joking. Because I mean, you talk about being soft. I like to think I'm a hard dude, but if I don't have that 2-inch thick cushion underneath my butt cheeks when I'm going 14 miles on the water, and I turn into a sour fella. So,
quick. Dude,
kayak cushion, man. That's the most unbelievable thing that we've been missing out on for so long.
I love the critics, because everyone I've ever known has one now, because they may not pay for their first one, win it in a tournament, win it in a raffle. Yeah. You'll end up with one, I promise you. And then most of us, we end up with 2. And
Absolutely.
then he's got his little lumbar support thing he just released. I might get that too. Like,
I'm going to get that. Absolutely. As soon as I get my hands on one, I'm going to get me a custom logoed Marshall Fishing one that I can put on my back and get me a lumbar support. Because, I mean, for all I know, he needs to come out with ones that go on my Hobie pedals, make my feet feel better. I'd buy those too.
Barefooters. Yes.
Yeah.
I'd let him like rig the deck of my boat with that stuff.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Oh, it'd be like walking on a memory foam mattress. It'd be fabulous.
Oh my yeah.
But yeah, who else you got, man?
That's pretty much it, man. I make a lot of stuff myself and have guys that make stuff for me, but that's the important ones. As far as people, my mom, my dad, my girlfriend Morgan, My boys, Thomason, Road Dogs, Pro Neighbor, Lambert. I'm going to do some fishing with Lambert this weekend, so we're going to try to get a little content out there and kind of ride this momentum while I'm still on that wave. So,
Oh yeah, man.
all the guys at work that give me crap for when I'm gone and holler at me, Bill Dance across our lot. That's real important. And every, I don't know how many people watch this, of course, but while I'm thinking of it, there was 9 million people, it seemed like, that shot me a message. And a lot of times in tournaments, some people stay off their phone. When I'm moving, mile here, mile there, while I'm looking and eating and stuff like that, I read those messages. And when they're giving me props, and nobody knows how important and how much I appreciate those things, and I don't appreciate everybody enough. That's always there for me, and our community as a whole. I really do appreciate that.
Heck yeah, man. You're just a different dude, man. You're a good guy, and I think you'll go, like you talked about it before, not being one of the names that people, would think about. Man, I think you're on your way. And I do think, dude, like you said, you and Lambert get out there, get some content, ride this momentum as long as you can. I'm sure it's only a matter of time before a bunch more of these companies are going to be reaching out to you, and it's just going to help for, push that envelope even further for you. So, but thanks for coming on again, man, for part 2. I'm super glad to have you. These are great conversations again. I got a lot of positive feedback from our first episode, and I really wanted to hear about the actual tournament itself side of it. So appreciate you for coming on, man. And I'm sure we'll have you on for, hopefully for a win, but I'm sure we'll have you on. I always take notes of, the people that make the best guests and can really carry a conversation. Like you, Adam Reiser, Russ is really good, Cody Milton, a lot of those guys. I've got a lot of topics coming up that for the off season, I'll probably be reaching out to you guys to, give your input on it. So stay tuned, folks. We'll have him back. But man, I appreciate it, and I'll holler at you next time.
Absolutely appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, real quick, everybody, while we still got you, I got one tournament that happened over the weekend. The Moyak guys were at Lake of the Ozarks with 25 anglers. 5 fish limit. First place, Justin Kuhn with 89.5. Second place, Mason Brock with 82. Third place, John Denton with 81 3/4. Well, we thank you all for tuning in this week. Check us back next week. We'll have another great guest and another great show. Couldn't tell you what it's going to be yet, but we'll get there soon. Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com.